Welcome everyone, my name is Lindsay Plater. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Guelph working with Dr. Nassim Ali-Drous, and today I'll be presenting some of my research that we've done in collaboration with Dr. Rashmi Gupta from the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, entitled The Interaction of Attentional Control Settings and Emotion. So, let's pretend for a moment that the COVID-19 pandemic is over and you've headed out to a busy mall to meet a friend. Your friend tells you that they are wearing a green shirt. What likely happens is that right away, certain people seem to jump out at you because they're wearing green, and the rest of the crowd seems to fade away, including certain salient individuals who are not wearing green. So this ability to zone in on folks who are wearing the color that you're looking for, while ignoring the folks who aren't wearing that color, is known to researchers as an attentional control setting. And importantly, an attentional control setting is based on your current goals. This means that only stimuli that match what you are currently looking for will capture your attention. What research do we have that indicates that these attentional control settings exist? Well, one task that has been used to measure these attentional control settings is a go-no-go gaze cueing task. So here participants must fixate at the center of the screen and monitor the periphery of their environment. So they have to press a button when their target dot appears. So in this case, a green dot. If a green dot appears, they press a button. If a red dot appears, they press nothing. And we can manipulate this between subjects, so some participants are looking for green and some are looking for red, but for the purposes of this talk, we'll just pretend that everyone is looking for green. Alright, so the participant is required to press a button if the dot is presented in their target green color, and they're required to do nothing if the dot is not in their target color. Importantly, the faces could be presented in either red or green. Green here being the attentional control set match condition. Because they're looking for green, the face could be shown in green. And red is the attentional control set non-match condition, because they're looking for green, but the face is in red. We also have a valid gaze condition and an invalid gaze condition. Valid meaning the eyes are pointing towards where the target will appear, and invalid meaning the eyes point away from where the target will appear. Alright, so if participants can adopt an attentional control setting for their target color, there is a specific expected pattern of results that we would see. We're looking at reaction times on the y-axis here. And what we see, or what we would expect to see, is in the attentional control set match condition, when the face is shown in green when folks are looking for green, we should see a difference of reaction times indicating that the direction of the gaze has captured attention. So in the valid condition, attention goes towards the location of the target and folks are fast to report the target. In the invalid condition, attention goes away from the target and folks have to reorient towards where the target is, meaning there's a slower reaction time. So this difference indicates that a green face would capture attention. But an attentional control set also determines what doesn't capture attention. So if you're looking for green and a red face appears, we should see no difference in reaction times because you're not looking for red, you're looking for green. So this is our expected pattern of results if participants form an attentional control set for that color that they're looking for. What did my advisor actually find in 2010? Exactly this pattern. If you're looking for green and a green face appears, you will follow the gaze. If you're looking for green and a red face appears, you won't follow the gaze. Alright, so we know that we can adopt attentional control settings for features we're currently looking for. But what about other kinds of information? Well, there's a separate field of research that has begun to investigate the role that emotion plays in the capture of visual attention. For example, this recent review of 55 experiments has demonstrated that emotional stimuli capture attention more than neutral stimuli. For many years, the focus of these emotional stimuli tasks was on negative valence, like threatening stimuli of snakes and spiders, as these are considered biologically relevant stimuli that should be attended in order to avoid danger. But more recent research has focused on the role of positive valence stimuli, and as it turns out, there are actually circumstances where positive stimuli capture attention when negative stimuli do not. Let me show you that. So, this is some work done by our collaborator, Dr. Rashmi Gupta. She used a perceptual load task with emotional faces and showed that sad faces can actually be inhibited. So here, participants complete a letter search task. They have to indicate whether the letter X or the letter N was presented on the current trial. There's a low load condition where the X is surrounded by a bunch of O's. This is a fairly easy task. And then there's a high load condition where an X is surrounded by the letters W, M, Z, K, and H. And this is much harder. Critically, there is a centrally presented image of either a happy or a sad face during this letter search task. Even though participants are instructed to ignore the face as it is a distractor that will not help them complete the task, the face still often captures some attention. So, this is the letter search task. Just after the letter search task, there's a surprise recognition task for the faces seen during the letter search task. And importantly, participants are correctly able to recognize the distractor face in a lot of circumstances. Let me show you. So this is percentage of participants who correctly identify the central face, even though they're told to ignore it. And what we see is in both the low and the high load condition, happy faces are reported pretty accurately at above 70%. In the low load sad condition, accuracy is also very high. But the interesting data point for us is what happens in the high load sad condition. And here we see accuracy below chance levels. This was a 2 alternative forced choice task, so accuracy would be 50%. And what we see here is that folks are actually able to inhibit those sad faces, and they can't correctly recognize the sad faces in the high load condition. So this research shows that there are some circumstances where happy faces capture attention when sad faces do not, and specifically that sometimes sad faces can actually be inhibited. Alright, so we know that our current attentional goals, also called our attentional control settings, are capable of guiding attentional capture. We also know that emotion is capable of guiding attentional capture. So this leads us to today's research question. What is the interaction between attentional control settings and emotional valence? And also, can we replicate Dr. Gupta's results with a different task to show that sad faces can be inhibited? If we go back to the example from the beginning of the talk, if you're searching for your friend who is wearing green, is it easier to find them if they're happy or sad? Also, what happens to the people who are wearing red? If they're happy or sad, can you ignore them? So, we're going to use the same go-no-go gaze cueing paradigm that I've already shown you. Participants are told to ignore the face and report the green target dot. If the dot is red, you're supposed to ignore it. We have a few different conditions. They're very similar to what you saw before. We can present the face in green or in red, with eyes that point towards or away from the target, and here we can show them either smiling or frowning. Our expected pattern of results: if folks form an attentional control set that can guide attentional capture, we should see that only stimuli that match the target they're currently looking for, so green faces when looking for green, should capture attention, and faces that do not match what you're looking for, like red faces when you're looking for green, should not capture attention. What did we actually find? So this is experiment 1. This was done face-to-face. This is the same sort of plot you've already seen. Here we're going to have happy on the left and sad on the right. And I'm actually going to show you what happens to the sad faces first. So what you should be able to see here is that this looks really similar to our attentional control set plot. This is showing us that when a sad face is presented, folks form an attentional control set that guides the capture of attention. But what about happy faces? Well, here it looks like all faces that are happy are capturing attention. It doesn't matter whether the face is presented in green or whether the face is presented in red, those happy faces are all capturing your attention. So these results roughly replicate the results of Gupta in that happy faces interact with attention in circumstances when sad faces do not. But it's not a direct replication because we didn't see inhibition of sad faces. So, why didn't we replicate Gupta's results, showing that sad faces can be inhibited? Well, as it turns out in the emotion literature, emotional frequency can actually really matter. In experiment 1, we showed emotional stimuli on every single trial, which means that 100% of the time, our distractor stimulus was an emotional face. And presenting frequent emotional distractors can actually lead to different kinds of control strategies. So what we've done for experiment 2 is we've added in some neutral faces. Gupta's original study had neutral, happy, and sad faces. So here we're going to change the frequency of emotion. We're going to show 50% neutral, 25% happy, and 25% sad to see if we can show that inhibition of sad emotional expressions. So what do we find for experiment 2? This was done online with the University of Guelph sample. Here we have happy on the left, neutral in the middle, and sad on the right, and I'm going to show you the results for happy and neutral first. What you should be able to see here is that happy and neutral faces are now regulated by the attentional control setting. So only what you're currently looking for is capturing your attention. What happens with sad faces? This is a different pattern of results. It's a little tricky to see, but we do have the stats to back it up that there's no difference here and there's no difference here. What this means is that folks are actually inhibiting those sad faces. So it doesn't matter whether you see a green sad face or a red sad face, that face is not guiding your attention anymore. So these results now replicate Gupta's results in that happy faces guide attention when sad faces are inhibited. And this might also indicate that participants are switching what kind of strategy that they're using. Alright, so what are our main takeaways from this study? Number 1, it's important to study interactions. I frequently study these attentional control settings in isolation, but it looks like there are some interesting interactions with things like attention and emotion. So real life is not as simple as our laboratory experiments, and we should be looking at other kinds of interactions. Number 2, by adjusting the frequency of emotional stimuli, we can actually enhance cognitive control. And for me to say this another way, by adding in those neutral faces to change how often we're showing emotion, we actually saw that observers were able to inhibit sad faces. So, you can find your friend in a crowd. It helps if you know what they're wearing, like the color green, and apparently it also helps if they're smiling. I'd like to thank my PhD committee, our collaborator Dr. Rashmi Gupta, the Visual Cognitive Neuroscience Lab at the University of Guelph, and our funding sources. I'm happy to answer any questions in person, or you can also email me at lplater@uofguelph.ca. Thank you.